Hello and welcome to Module 14. In this module, we are going to learn about exploring spatial data with ArcPy. So we're going to do a lot of the things that we would do in the desktop, maybe by right-clicking on data or on tools in order to find out what they're all about and to find out where they are and if they're in the place that we want them to be. So specifically, we're going to learn how to utilize the concepts of exists. We're going to also work with lists. So lists are something you're very familiar with in Python. We're going to start to see their value when working with GIS data. And we're also going to learn about the ArcPy describe object, which is really going to be our access to everything that is in the properties options of the things when you're in the desktop environment. So make sure you come down here and read about our objectives for this week. It's about learning how to use the exist function to determine if a workspace or a data set exists or not. We're going to learn different methods for listing out our geospatial data, and we're going to learn how we can utilize some wildcards, limit things by data type. We're also going to learn about iteration of our geoprocessing tasks by using our friend the for loop. You're going to be introduced to the describe function, which is going to introduce you to both the describe object and the spatial reference object. So we're going to get into looking at the coordinate systems of our data and how do we change those with the project tool. And at the very end of this, you're going to take and write a larger script that is going to be partially guided, where you are going to migrate data from a whole workspace of data from one coordinate system to another, and then you're also going to work with moving that data and renaming it to another location. So that's one pretty big geoprocessing task that gets done on a regular basis, is doing something to an entire workspace of data and then needing to be able to rename it or relocate it, and that's what the script in this particular module is going to teach you to do. All right, so let's just go, and I'm going to give you a quick glance at everything that's going on for this particular module. The first thing here is you're going to be learning about the exists method within ArcPy. So you'll see here, you're going to go through with each of these and you are going to watch a short video that's going to explain and do a couple of demonstrations on screen for you. And then you're going to quickly come back to Canvas and you're going to do some hands-on practice with each of these things that you're learning about in this module. So you need to make sure you have idle or spider. We're doing this outside of ArcPro. So we're not going to be doing any more coding within ArcPro. You might within the chapter books, he might guide you back over there to practice some things, but for the material that's in Canvas, you will always be in either idle or spider, whichever one you choose. So go ahead here and open it up and type in the lines of code that you are guided to do, making sure that you update your directory paths to where your data is sitting on disk. So notice here we're going back to that exercise 5 folder from your chapter 5 of your book. So we're just going to utilize some data that's sitting in there for some really quick hands-on activities with this particular module section. Make sure you go through all the activities and take special note of the activity summary notes. So that's going to come back and remind you of the things that you've gone through and the key elements that you want to make sure you take away from each of these activities. Next, we're going to move on to exploring spatial data by creating lists. So again, watch the short video here that's going to explain to you the different functions available in ArcPy for listing out data. And then you're going to come down and do some hands-on practice with our list feature classes. You are going to learn how to list specific feature classes using a wildcard optional parameter. You're also going to learn how to list specific feature classes of a specific type, for example, polygons or lines or points within a workspace, being able to identify data by their geometry type just using ArcPy. And again, there's some activity notes down here that you need to make sure that you read for your summary of those activities. Next, we're going to land on the describe module. So the describe function is going to give us access to our describe object. Again, the short video here is going to describe the describe function and the describe object for you and give you some visuals about what's going on there. And then you'll come down to do your hands-on practice. Again, just make sure you're updating that directory path. And you're going to go through and you're going to describe some GIS data, and you're going to learn how to get into specific things like describing its catalog path. Where does it sit? How do you gain access to that string of information? How do you gain access to the data type? If you're just looking at data on disk, not in a GIS software where all those nice little icons are, how do we know what the geometry of the data is? Well, we get into the describe object and we can get it to tell us, and that's going to be your practice here is finding out this information about the data by using your ArcPy skills. Then we're going to transition on off of Describe is also where we gain access to spatial reference information for our data. So the spatial reference object is part of the Describe object, and we're going to learn how to get into specifically the spatial reference property of the spatial reference object that lives on the Describe object. So there's kind of a nested layering of how we get to our spatial reference information that we're typically most interested in, and that's what these activities here are going to help you do. It's going to help you learn the order of things that you need to do in order to get into that spatial reference property to report out what you have and what your data, the spatial reference that your data is in. Again, some activity summary notes here. There are a couple of links here too, because there is a lot of information on that Describe object. We're only going to touch on the things that are the most kind of important, that you are going to see the most often, but there's a lot that's on there, and I don't want you to get bogged down in that long list. I just want you to go off and see. Go off and look at everything, and then just know that we're going to focus on the things that we have here in the Canvas site. I also want you to read a little bit more about that spatial reference object and all of the different properties that are available there. We're going to only hone in on a couple of the properties that have to do with the spatial reference name, the projection name, the datum name, and then what we call the WKID, which you'll learn about in this module. Those are the three main things we're going to focus on, but I want you to see that there's a lot of other things that are available there, just so that you know that the possibilities are broader than what we're going to do here in class, but learning what we're doing here in class is going to give you the skills that if you would ever need to go and take advantage of those other properties, you could, because you would know exactly where to go to find the help documentation, and you already understand how that Describe and spatial reference object work. Next thing is you are going to go to your textbook. So your textbook this year, this semester, is a really nice compendium and really nice thing to add on and give you even more practice and more information about what we're learning. So exploring spatial data in this textbook is in chapter 6. You want to make sure you go and read the chapter. Make sure that you remember you're not expected to run the example code in the book. That's not how he's written the book. It's just for you to be able to see how some things play out. You're going to recognize a lot of concepts in chapter 6. So that's where you're going to kind of see, oh yes, well, I've learned about this before, and now he's taking this a little bit further. And then your second activity here is to read about this thing called f-strings. F-strings are new for Python 3, so I had to learn about f-strings in order to prepare for this semester. It is a new way for Python to deal with strings, and the Better Than Me describing it to you is a really nice resource from a Python resource that gives you an example of f-strings and how they're different from strings in other Python versions. So make sure you read that before you get into the activity for chapter 6, because in the activity he just jumps into f-strings. He doesn't really explain what they are, so I want you to know what they are before you go into the exercise for chapter 6. Here is the PDF for the exercise for chapter 6 and the link to download your data. Same thing as before in your Module 14 folder. Make sure you're downloading it, unzipping it, cleaning it up so that it is a nice little clean string of information that you can reference within your Python code. You need to be prepared to turn in all of the scripts that you're going to write throughout the course of this activity for the chapter, with special attention to the list copy script. That's going to be one I'm going to ask you to do some updates and actually turn in a real professionally built code. So you need to go down here and make sure you read about the updates that I want you to do to just that particular one. You don't have to update all of them, just the list copy, but you do need to turn in all of them. For the list copy, the version I want you to turn in is this one. You don't need to turn in your original, just the updated. And then where you will turn it in is on this next page here within the module. So 14.7 is where you'll actually turn it in. I have just copied and pasted the instructions for what you need to turn in again on this page, and you will upload it there. And then after that, you are going to get to your Exploring Spatial Data assignment, and this is going to be the one where you are going to be writing a script that's going to do a professional application of taking data from one area in one coordinate system, moving it to another coordinate system, and then also moving it to another location on disk. So a lot of things going on there. It is, like I said, a partially guided scripting experience. So just make sure you download the document here that's going to guide you through that, and then the data sets that you will need are in this zipped file. So again, pay close attention to what's required to be turned in, and that is on the document. And remember that there is a quiz also that follows this assignment. The quiz is going to go back and harken some of the things that you answered throughout the course of this assignment. So I would recommend, as you wrap up this assignment, immediately go on to the quiz because it will be most fresh for you. But if you've taken good notes on that document and answered the questions that are on that document, you will have the information necessary to do very well on the quiz. That is the next thing here, is that quiz. And then after the quiz, you are done. So as you can see, that's a lot of stuff to get through, which is why I'm giving you 2 full weeks to move through it. But you want to make sure that you don't save everything to the end of week 2. Do not start this on March 17th. You need to make sure you are plotting out between those 2 full weeks a way to kind of carve away time to work on this little by little. And like I said, ask questions. You're going to be getting into some new material. You're going to be encountering some new errors when it comes to your scripts. In the coming weeks, we're going to talk about best practices for dealing with errors in our scripts with ArcPy, just like we talked about how to deal with errors in just our Python scripts. So we're going to start talking about that in the next coming modules, but always reach out and ask questions, and I look forward to hearing from you.